It is a huge honor today to be interviewing Rob Joyce in a suburb of Milwaukee, correct?
Correct.
With Edge Wealth Advisors. I interviewed one of your contemporary partners yesterday.
Mr. Barr, correct?
Yes. How did he say it went? Did he say it went well?
Yeah, it went great. It was the quickest hour he's ever had. He said you were a great host, and he really enjoyed it. So we're happy to be on here.
Well, I always say I feel sorry for you guys a lot because, policemen only go to the police academy to learn how to catch bad guys. Firemen only want to put out fires. And we went to school for 8 years because we really want you to come in and have a broken tooth and be the hero and get you out of pain and fix y'all up. And then we find out when we open up our business that we have to do these other annoying things like payroll and marketing and finance. And then your department is that someday our eye-hand coordination is going to be so bad that we'll have to retire. And I actually hope that I get to die at a chair. But you've been doing this for a long time with Edge Advisors, edgewealthadvisors.com. So what's the low-hanging fruit? What should dentists be thinking about? I mean, are they really going to retire someday? About what age are they going to retire? Do they usually have enough money? What's the low-hanging fruit on what you do?
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit for us really is just to get a plan and clarity in place. I think much like most people think with dentists, they don't want to know. They don't want to know that they have 15 cavities, so they avoid going, right? Well, dentists do the same thing to their wealth management picture. They don't want to know, they'll sock them away, but they don't want to get down in the quantifiable numbers and plan for retirement. And the truth of the matter is, it's really easy. Dentists, for as much compression as there has been maybe on business, are in a great position. They do well. They're entrepreneurs. They have a lot of valuable tools to them, including free cash flow sometimes. The important thing is to just plan out, okay, how do you want to retire? Now, Howard, I think we differ a little bit in that I'm a wealth manager, right? And I can't tell you where the stock market's going to go. And I'm not going to even try to do it, right? But I can tell you that we're going to do our best to hit your goals. And so I want people to invest for goals, not for dreams. And a lot of dentists that, you go to cocktail parties and they all want to talk about the stock that they found and they made 15% in 3 days. And that's great. I'm glad they do it. I hope they do it with a little bit of money because it's not their profession and they shouldn't be trying to just get bragging rights. So our focus is more to bring some clarity to their retirement picture, figure out the number that they have to get to retire happily, what they will need in retirement. And we go through the basic kind of practices where we can figure out, okay, here's what you need. If they tell us when they sit down, hey, I want a Ferrari, I'd like a private island, and a couple $1 million in the bank, well, we've got to get really aggressive about how you're saving retirement today. You're going to have to own a couple of practices. You're going to have to really rip at it, right? Most of them are just sitting there saying, if I'm making 80% of what I'm making today in retirement, I'll be happier than a pig in slop. And if that's the case, well, let's get you there. Let's not try to get 20% when the market's up 15, and let's not try to just save zero when it's down 20.
So is that your goal? 80% of the income you're used to? 80%?
Everyone's different. Everyone can, like I said, some people have really big goals, and I love those dentists, and they're great. They're fun to work with, but you always have to bring them back to reality. When it comes to when you're looking at your income right now, assume if you can pull 80% of your income out of your retirement along with Social Security, a pretty good spot. You should be able to live happily.
So you've been doing this for a decade. So in your decade experience, how old is the average dentist when they do this and they retire?
When they retire?
Yeah.
I think it's between 55, 58, somewhere around there.
Wow, is it really that early?
Yeah.
And are they doing that because they're burned out and don't like dentistry, or because they had a heart attack or cancer or some disability?
I think they sell, and I could, Mike and Andy Lemko, another partner with our group, could talk more specifically about dentists. I've gotten this in the past 3 years with dentists specifically, been working with investors for over 10 years, but my wife bought a practice actually 3 years ago, and that's how I got involved working with dentists, because I saw all the pain she went through understanding her practice when she bought it, and also kind of the questions that came about because she didn't have the business background, but she's all of a sudden a small business owner with 7 people depending on her. So that's when I got involved with dentists, and the dentist she bought from was 55. And I know people hang on for a while. The dentist before that was, I think, 70 when he left. So I do think retirement and having enough in the retirement accounts does fuel the decision of when to sell the practice. And you see 2008 happen, right? A lot of guys hung on to their practice a little while longer because you don't slaughter the golden goose. That's what brings your income every year. You're going to get one time $500,000, $800,000 payout. Great. But if you hold on to that, you can be making $200,000 a year without too much effort.
So let's cut to the chase. If one of my viewers is listening to this show right now and knows that Edge Wealth Advisors is a big firm that only does dentistry and they got an unbelievable reputation. If they wanted to talk to you, how much does it cost to talk to you to get a plan like this? How much is the plan?
Sure. I mean, we've worked with our focus is really private practice dentists. So we definitely will welcome anyone in. We want to work with growers. We have people who have started with $0, set up a simple plan. I help them set up. I walk it through. They either took over practice from their father and the father didn't have anything, or he rolled out a 401k and they're like, what should I do? We decided to do a simple plan for their practice, and they started with $0 in the account. And it's a great situation, great relationship for me because I get to work with a young dentist who is just like my wife and has the same questions, and I can be valuable for him. On the other side, we work with dentists who are near the end of retirement, have over $1 million in their retirement accounts, and are just figuring out how do they live off of this for the rest of their life. What are the prudent things they should be doing in terms of insurance or disability or long-term care.
But I was asking, how much does it cost for one of my listeners to talk to you to get a plan?
Oh, $0 to talk to me.
$0. And how do they talk to you?
They reach me through our website or give me a call.
What's your phone number?
414-315-2141.
And they can email you, Rob at edgewealthadvisors.com.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're saying that what you've been seeing in your firm, and you're married to a dentist, is that this is most likely going to come up between like 55 and 58 years old, and for the average person at 55 to 58, if they're going to live off 80% of their income, how much money are they going to have, and how much of that are they going to fund by selling their dental office?
Sure. Well, obviously it's dependent on the size of the dental office, but assume of your retirement assets that you're going to be able to pull 4% per year. That's the magic number, right? So you can back into that. If you need $100,000 a year, what are you going to need to get to $100,000? $100,000 divided by 0.04 will give you that kind of 2.5 number. Is that
2.5?
Is my math right there?
Let me double check. 100,000 divided by 0.04. You are on the mark. $2,500,000. Now I want to tell you the biggest secret on how to get that number overnight.
Let's hear it.
If I said to you, Rob, describe to me an American worth $100 million. Describe this person for me.
Describe worth $100 million?
Yeah, the average American. Describe that person who has $100 million.
Probably has a trust fund or started a tech company.
He did, but he's dead. If you're worth $100 million, over 90% of them are 80-year-old ladies, and they're widows. And the best way to retire, especially for a young, handsome guy like you could have just swabbed and debonaired one of these 80-year-old women worth $100 million, and then just wait it out. That's my secret thing. And I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and rumor has it that Phoenix and Scottsdale and Florida most of them live in these areas. So that's my whole retirement plan. When I don't want to do dentistry anymore, I'm going to go start dating 80-year-old women in Scottsdale that already have a Ferrari and a boat and a private island. So that $2.5 million. Okay. Well, let's talk about the specifics. What are the tax advantage saving plans? I mean, we talk about a 401k. How much can you fund that? What's the tax advantage of that? Is there other plans? You hear of Roth IRA. These specific terms. Can you go through the common lingo, IRS advantage tax things?
Yep, everyone knows the 401k, I think, or at least has vaguely familiar with them. They're great savings plans. They're for a little bit larger. They're a little bit expensive to set up. There's a record keeper. There's just a bunch of kind of complex paperwork that goes along with it. However, they do allow you to put away of your personal money $18,000 a year, $24,000 if you're over 50. So you can put away pre-tax $24,000 if you're over 50, $18,000 if you're under. Plus, you could do a match where your company, which you own, matches what you contribute up to a percent of your compensation, and that can get you to a max of $53,000 a year in your retirement in the 401k plan.
How do you get to 53 if you got 18,000 and then the employer matches? Would it be
because
a full match?
It's a match of your compensation. So it's a percentage match of your compensation. The problem is, Howard, is if you say, okay, great, I'm going to match 10% in my 401k, you have to then match all of your employees the same amount. If you own your dental practice, you can't say, hey, match me 10, but those guys I want to match 2. It doesn't work that way. So the 401k, they're not often there's not often high matches in them, but you can get yourself up to $53,000 in a 401k.
I set mine up when I got out of school in 1987, and I did set up all my employees for it, and I do the matching because I didn't think it was morally, ethically right for me personally. I had to be true to myself. I couldn't look myself in the mirror and at 65 walk away a millionaire and then have my assistant Jen, who's been with me since day one. She's been there 28 years with me, walk away and live off Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. I just didn't think that was right. And I also think, I have no data for this, but in dentistry we sell the invisible. So they don't know they don't know if they need a filling or a crown or a root canal. They're trusting us. And I think they trust us more when we don't have staff turnover. And I think when my patients come in and they've seen Jan there for 28 years and they like her, they just assume I'm probably a good guy if she's standing by my side for 20 years. I think it makes them trust more. So I think you make a lot more money when you have less staff turnover. And I think a 401k for employees is good business because I think a lot of them. What percent of dentists do you experience do it for the employees or just themselves?
This is where Howard being a nice guy really saved you, because if you didn't match, you would have been found out by the IRS and they would have been all over your tail for not matching. So you have to match as an employer. They all match. It's just at what percent do they match, and that dictates what they get and what the employees get. Most do a 3% match, which is typical. Then there's a vesting schedule, which can go along with it. You can give them, which is kind of for retainment. You can say, if you just hired a new hygienist, and he comes on and he's working for you, and he's putting away money, but he doesn't stick around for the vesting schedule, or he's there for 2 years to get 100% vested, then he loses your whole match, and that goes back into the kitty essentially. So it's kind of like, hey, you tell him when he walks in, our vesting schedule is 2 years. So you're going to get this match from our company, but you have to stick around for that 2 years in order to be fully vested and get that match. So not only is retainment saying, this is so nice of you, you set this up for me, but also I have to stick around. It's just a financially good decision for me to stick around because I put that money away.
So do you need to be a corporation to be a 401k?
No, LLCs can do, anyone can do it. The business does it. You set it up with a plan.
You have to be an LLC?
Yes, you can't set it up as an individual.
Oh, okay, so you got to be an LLC.
The individuals are the participants, and the plan sponsor is the LLC.
Okay, so then give us your best spiel for, you're probably talking about 7,000 dentists driving to work, or unless you're driving home from work, and it could be morning, breakfast, night.
Sure.
So go through the criteria of whether a dentist should do a 401k, and if she didn't set up 401k, what would be another retirement plan?
Sure. The simple is, we do a lot of simples for doctors, and I'll tell you why. I talked about the 401k. It's probably, if I'm an administrative standpoint, this is all, it depends on numbers and a lot of different, but generally $5,000 say a year to administer a 401k, which can get expensive for someone just starting out and only has 4 or 5 employees. It's like, hey, I don't need all that overhead. I don't want to start that. It's not worth it for me. Simple plans are simple. They're very easy to do. Most of our dentists will do simple plans. It allows you to put a little less money away, $12,500 compared to that $18,000, but it still does give the employer match of up to 3%. You can't go past 3% of their compensation every dollar that they put in. Simple plan, I think, is great. If there's a dentist out there listening who just started practice and is finally 6 months in, sees cash flows are good, talks to their accountant, talks to a guy like Mike Bark, and says, hey, cash flows are okay, you're steadying out, you should feel comfortable, you should probably look at a retirement plan for 2 reasons. One, like you said, you're going to want to retire one of these days. you're going to want to stop, and you want to have a little money in the bank when you do so. Two, it's a good tax savings, tax advantage to do so because you're putting away money for yourself and for your employees pre-tax. Three, it helps retain some of your employees. They're going to be pretty fired up when they realize they can save some money pre-tax and they can get a matching contribution. And typically from a dentist, when they have their staff there's not 5 executives at a dental office, right? It's usually one executive making all decisions. He's probably getting paid the most and a number of underneath. So the compensation, what it takes to do a simple plan and to match their employees' compensation is not a huge expense. It's not going to take you down in a year.
Now, when you say a simple plan, are you just saying a simple plan like an adjective, or are you saying a legal term that's set up by the IRS?
It's called a simple IRA. So say 401k is the most complex, but you can put away the most money, costs a pretty good amount. Simple is the simplest, costs the least, and is really easy to set up. It is very simple to do. We use Vanguard for our platform. Vanguard's been spoken really highly of. I like them a lot. Low cost, great performance. It's the best of both worlds, and that's who we use for our investments. So then I would come in and help them set up a simple plan, talk to all their employees, let them know this is available to you, and then they can decide if they want to participate or not.
And I don't want to assume any of these listeners are. I have an MBA, and I think I want to. I want you to go into explain the Vanguard. I want you to go into specifics because you started off saying, yeah, you might be able to pick a stock and make 20% in 3 days and whatever. But when you're talking about getting out of school at 25 and retiring at 65, explain what an index fund is. Explain why you chose Vanguard as opposed to a mutual fund or just some terminology for the listeners.
Yeah, I think the two biggest thing, and it's really come into kind of into fashion lately, and I'm happy it has, is passive investing, right? The best way to passively invest is with an index fund, which simply tracks an index, whether it be the S&P 500, which is the United States, the 500 companies in the United States. So it's kind of a proxy for the U.S. economy. There's FXI, which is China, which has obviously been in the news lately. It's having a little volatility to it. So they have all different companies have set up these different index funds to track a certain index across a country and across the world. And you can have commodity indexes. So it is not trying to pick specific stocks and outperform any one index, as mutual funds typically do. So mutual funds will go out and say, we're going to hire the 10 brightest guys. They're going to analyze the hell out of the stock universe, and they're going to pick the 10 that they like the best in this defined sector. If you like that, come with us. We're going to invest your money. Typically, they're more expensive to do that, but in the long run, it's expected that they don't outperform. You can dig into the research, and people have come up with statistics that have said index passive investing is the best way to go. People have come up with information saying mutual fund investing is the best. I think it's dependent on the environment, but overall, if I'm talking to a guy about 30 years, I want to be pretty passive on about 80% of his money. And so that's where we go. Vanguard was mentioned in Warren Buffett. He mentioned them in their letter, and they got a huge bump because I think they passed $1 trillion assets, mostly because he said, if I was going to invest today, I would put 80% in index, low-cost index-based funds. I recommend Vanguard. I like Vanguard. That one comment obviously shot Vanguard. Vanguard's great to begin with, but that shut them even further.
You want to know how old I am? I went to.
Are you going to let us know this?
I got a funny Warren Buffett story. I actually grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and went to Omaha, Nebraska, where Warren Buffett lives, to go to Creighton University. And the reason I did that, it was the only undergrad university I even knew of that had their own dental school, and they filled their class from their undergrad, and it was just a great environment. And I signed up for Business 101, and it was like this 70-year-old Italian instructor with long hair. He was just a eclectic, great guy. And anyway, he'd give us 10 extra credit points if we went and listened to this guest lecture on Friday night from 7 to 10 and write up 100 words on what we thought of him. And guess who it was?
Buffett, huh?
Yeah, and I should have taken all my college money and put it in Berkshire Hathaway, and then went and got a job at Taco Bell. And I would have
you'd have the Ferrari in Private Island. We'd be doing these down there.
And so what these guys are saying, to try to simplify it, is that if I pick a stock picker, that fund is going to cost me a couple of percent every year. What percent would that fund cost me? Whereas if I get an index fund, and he's calling it passive investing because a computer picks the stocks. If you got the Fortune 500, you got a stock in each one of those Fortune 500. So there's a very little fee. What is the difference in a fee from like a Vanguard to an average?
Garden variety. If you take Vanguard to like a mutual fund, it can be anywhere from 75 basis points to 1%, and even further on the mutual funds. Some of them get pretty high. 1.25, 1.5 isn't awful to see. The Vanguard funds I use, and I have to be careful obviously on what we talk about, but the Vanguard funds I use can range anywhere between 12 basis points and 23 for the most part.
Explain the basis points. I flew over someone's head listening.
Sorry. Yep. 1% equals 100 basis points. So if I say 18 basis points, that's 18 100ths. So when you look at the kind of the spread there, that's money going into their pocket that they don't have to pay someone to pick.
So if you could talk to the average 5,000 graduates that walked out of school in May, what would you tell them? You'd tell them to set up a simple IRA?
Yeah. If they own their own practice, as soon as they buy their own, first I would tell them to go with an associate dentist and get a few years under their wings so they can understand the kind of the business side of it. Because Howard, I think you were pretty lucky. You had a business mind, and when you came out, you could kind of hop right into it. I think most dentists struggle to get the business side of it, the HR and all the cash flows and the operations, and it's not what they want to focus on. So I think understanding how much of that business aspect of owning your own practice really is takes a couple of years. So do that first and contribute to a simple at that time. Then when you own your own practice, start with a simple. It's simple, it's low cost, and you can put some money away for a couple of years. Things go really well. You talk to Mike Bark, your accountant, he says, look, you've got so much money you don't know what to do with. All right, let's look at 401ks, look at profit sharing with cash balance plans, et cetera, et cetera. But that is not a conversation for most dentists that they can have on day 1 or even day 90 of owning a practice, because it's just you want to get your feet like grounded, you want to feel good. So that's what I would say. I would look at doing it right away. But even more than that, it's just come up with a plan. Whether it's talking to me or any advisor, come up with an idea of what you want your life to look like. Because
so you said the simple plan, you could put away $12,500 a month, and with the 401k, it was $18,000 a month.
Not a month.
A year. So the simple was $12,500 a month. So if you put that away from 25 to 65, would you be close to that $2.5 million?
Now you're really testing my math here a little bit. I'm not a Rain Man.
It's only a 40-year prediction.
Yeah, it's 40 years plus. Say we compounded at 9%. You're going to be relatively risky because you have time, and you're going to hopefully buy these dips and invest in a disciplined way. You're not going to get to 2.5 million, but you're going to be pretty well off. I'm trying to think of it in my head right now of if we could what we'd be at. And I think what's important is to understand. So you need 2.5 million, or you need $100,000 a year. Social Security, which hopefully is around when the dentists coming out are retiring, is going to kick in some of that 100,000. There's dentists now 24 to 30, so now that takes you down to needing 70. So
how much is Social Security? So right now, I'm 53 this week. So when I get there, I think they've moved it up from 65 to 67. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you'll be 66 and a half.
Okay.
The year you reach 66 and a half by April 1st, you can start saying, give me my money.
Yeah. And then do they give you more if you wait a couple of years? Don't they do that?
Yeah, they do. And what it does, it goes up 8% every year until you're 70. And it's not 8% compounding. It's 8% on say you would get $20,000 or $100. Let's make it really simple, right?
Yeah.
Say you get $100 every year when you hit 66 and a half. If you wait till you're 67 and a half, it's going to go to $108 a year. If you wait one other year, it's going to be 116. So you're not compounding on that 108. You're just going from your base, and you get 8% a year until you're 70.
So it starts at 66 and a half, and they do that all the way to 70?
Mm-hmm. And it's basically, for the most part, it's 66 and a half. You have to put your age in because they are having people work longer. So, in a certain age range, and I'm not sure the specifics on them, but certain age ranges, it's 66 and a half. Some are 66. So some of us are. I
got to tell you a personal story about my uncle. He finally passed away, but he sweated out his Social Security his whole life because he lied about his age to get into World War II. You had to be
Yeah.
16, and he wanted to go fight, so he lied. At 15, he moved his birthday over a year and joined the Navy. And so he was always sweating out that someday Social Security's going to call him up and tell him that he's a fraud and a criminal and a fake. And we kept saying, we're pretty sure there were no computers back then. And
they're not going to have it.
Yeah, they probably couldn't even go in and find the piece of paper you signed. So
what a cool uncle, though, huh?
Yeah, he.
If you're signing up to fight, that's a guy I want to meet. Who says he lies so he can go fight? That's awesome.
Yeah, he went to Okinawa for the whole war. So what other? So we know you need to start saving, and we know the longer you save, the better you're going to do. We know don't go try to pick in a stock because you do root canals, you don't do stock picking. And what other low hanging fruit advice would you say on what you've learned?
I think that discipline is probably the biggest thing when it comes to investing. And so I think there are some dentists out there, the 5,000, probably 7,000 by the time this one comes out. I think you're gaining in popularity, Howard. There are some dentists sitting there thinking, I can do this all on my own, right? And these advisors don't do anything because I call them up and I ask him, hey, where's the stock market going? And he can't tell me anything. So I don't need him. That's not what an advisor is for. I said that off the beginning, and that's not what we're here for. Your advisor should give you clarity, execution, and discipline. If you can do those on your own, if you can pull all your assets together and say, you know what, I know where everything is, what it all looks like, how it's historically grown over the past, and what I'm going to be at when I retire, you may not need it. And you can go in, you can get into the software, you can execute, you can keep yourself on a disciplined investment schedule, then you may not need an advisor. Absolutely. You might want one. It'll take a lot off that.
Go ahead.
I think this is a really key point. Market timing is a really dangerous game to get into, right? And people say, well, I don't market time. I just invest. Well, if you put $1,000 into the month one quarter and then $10,000 into the month the next quarter, you effectively, passively market timed because you put a bigger bet at a point different in the market. So when it comes to an advisor, he should keep you on a disciplined schedule of investing and rebalancing so that you're not market timing, because as much as that can do great for you, if you bought the bottom this morning, you would be up 4% already just today alone. It could do great wonders for you. But if you put it in on Monday because you thought, hey, this looks good, you're down probably 7%.
I'm old enough to remember my freshman year in college was 1980 when interest rates went to 21%, unemployment was double digit, inflation was double digit, and everyone thought the world was going to stop. And then I lived through Black Monday in 87, right when I graduated. I graduated in May, and that happened October, and I'm just sitting there like, oh, me, oh, my. And then, of course, the March of 2000 internet bubble stock, then 2008 Lehman's Day collapse, and now China just collapsed. And you're right. You just like when people ask me, they said, well, you've been to China. What do you think of that stock market? And it's like, well, when you go to China, every single person is busy working.
Yeah.
So in the long run, you can't bet against that. They're all working, and most of them are all working from about 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week. And they'll tell you their hardest day of the week is Sunday because that's when they got to go do all their house and personal stuff. I like the analogy that the stock market is in the long term. It's like walking up a hill, but watching the daily stock prices is like staring at the yo-yo going up and down as you're walking up the hill. And imagine if every time you came home, your next door neighbor yelled, "I'll buy your house for $100,000." And the next day you came home, "I'll buy it for $200,000." And every day you had to hear that noise.
Get nervous.
Yeah, and you just you're going to live in your house, and if you live in it 10, 20, 30, 40 years, I'm sure it's going to go up in value, and your stock's going to go up in value. And it's very hard to get emotional humans to look at the long term instead of the short term. Yeah. So what other? A lot of dentists are readers. I've spent the night in hundreds of people's homes, and the one thing that all dentists, physicians, and lawyers have is they have 100+ nonfiction books, and they've read them all.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm at someone's house that's not a dentist, a physician, or a lawyer, almost always there's no books in the house except for some fiction, like People Magazine and 50 Shades of Grey. So these guys are readers. If there's a young kid and he wanted to get his hands around all this, what's on your best reading
Oh,
list?
wow. Well, the Misbehavior of Markets is a great book. It's by Benoit Mandelbrot. If you know the Mandelbrot set, IBM kind of PhD, really brilliant guy. Did some statistical research basically showing that statistics are pretty much lies when it comes to the markets, and that they misbehave more regularly than we believe, or than the statistics would tell us. Good book, good read. Other than that, the End of Poverty is a book by Jeffrey Sachs. And then The Origins of Wealth is another great book. It's a Bible book, but really it goes back to just how we look at wealth and where it was, where kind of the foundations were. It's kind of a piece of it. The author went over to Africa, and they asked him, he was in a village, and they asked him, well, how many cattle do you have, right? And he says, well, I don't have any. And the people in the village are like, this guy's so broke, he doesn't have any cattle. Because that was what was wealth to them, was cattle. Now I think we flipped it. Like, what's your stock portfolio? And that's what the dentists want to talk about. What stocks do you have in your portfolio? Because that's an indication of wealth, and that's how we look at it. But that book is The Origin of Wealth is a great book too. So.
Who wrote that, and when did that come out?
Oh, I don't know who wrote it, but it's been out since 2003 at least.
Yeah, I like Peter Lynch's Beat the Street.
Yeah.
And I also love to go to my idol. I mean, I like to listen to people who did it. And Warren Buffett beats everyone on the planet. He's 80 plus years old. He's a good town boy from Nebraska. And I just like going to his website, Berkshire Hathaway, and reading his annual report. I think once a year,
his annual letter,
to read his annual letter. You just feel like you're sitting in a rocking chair next to your grandpa. And here he is, old enough to be my grandpa, just telling me, just settle the heck down, and here's the story. And he explained, Einstein said, if you can't explain to someone, you probably don't understand it. And Warren Buffett can just explain the entire investment world in one letter once a year, and it's a great piece. So what else did you want to talk about? What else should these guys know?
Yeah, I don't know.
You also served as a mentor to the NFL's business management and entrepreneurial program, and I used to read in the papers all the time that the average person who made all that money in the NFL about 4 years after their career was over basically had lost all their money. Is that still true today? Have they been working on that at the NFL? Are they any better investors for their past employees?
I think they're, the NFL is doing their part. They have the programs that are at universities across the country, and they definitely have the resources there for the players. I give a lot of the credit to the players. I think this number is getting a lot better. And there's some real success stories. Unfortunately, as you know, some people like the media likes to harp on the bad guys that, look how much money this guy blew. And not often are the good stories out there. My roommate of mine in college, Jeff Fain, had a 10-year NFL career, great guy. And we've done some things together. That's how I kind of got involved with some of the NFL players. He has a business empire down in Florida that he's been building up since he was playing. And he knew when he was playing that this is coming to an end. He didn't know the last 10 years, but he knew that. And I'd like to say, and if he's out there, he'll listen to this. He's an all-star. He's a great guy, but he's not the anomaly. There are a lot of other guys in the NFL that have passions that they want to follow, and they're finally getting kind of the mentoring and everything they need through the NFL programs and through mentors. I like to look at the NFL and the entrepreneurs a little bit, and then transitioning that to the dentists. And I think the biggest thing and biggest problem the dentists have is they don't understand that they are an entrepreneur. Once they buy that practice, and kind of the difficulties that they come into, some of the best things that they can do, best practices that they can do when it comes to it. And a lot of that is just kind of managing their business and figuring out what are the best decisions and getting the best people on board. I think what we do here at Edge is great. I'd say we're number one in the business of providing these services to dentists. But I know that there are others out there, and it's just a matter of getting out and finding them. My wife definitely wouldn't have found Edge. It was fortuitous. They were doing the sale, and they were a blessing to her throughout her purchase. So it was great. You can lean on your accountants a lot.
So what all does Edge Wealth Advisors do? I mean, what all are their departments?
Yeah, so there's Edge Advisors is the business services. So we'll handle everything: accounting, wealth management, mergers and acquisition. We'll do hygiene coaching. We'll help them out on that. We have an insurance side to it for disability, for life, And we also have a marketing arm too that can handle and help you out with logo design, website. It's kind of we designed it to be a one-stop shop to help out the dentist out there. And I don't know if there's, I feel like we're pretty unique, and maybe you know of other groups, Howard, out there that do the same thing. But there's a real value, I think, to having a dentist find a single group that he really trusts and appreciates. And that starts with Mike Park, the accountant, and he just provides so much trust with these people who are probably making next to either getting married or deciding to go to dental school, one of the biggest decisions of their life, if they're buying or selling their practice. It's huge, right?
Well, I always thought it was interesting that, and I'm guilty of this too, that I flew to Key Biscayne, 5 different times for a week to learn about dentistry at the Pank Institute. I flew to Mish. I went to LVI, go to all these places. And dentists always want to learn how to make something. They always want another recipe to make another souffle in someone's mouth. And you sit there and you have to sit there and beat in these guys that, okay, you make something, but you also sell something, and you got to watch the numbers. I mean, it's people, time, and money, and they just almost never want to do the money part. And if you're a young kid listening to this, my 28 years of watching graduating classes, the ones that do the best is if their mom and dad owned a business. And I don't care if it was a dairy farm, a dental office, a restaurant. But if your dad worked on the assembly line and your mom stayed home and made cookies, you missed about 1,000 dinner conversations that really impact your dental office. I mean, I think the luckiest dentists out there are the ones whose their mom or dad was a dentist. I mean, they don't even realize what they learned through osmosis listening to mom and dad talk at the dinner table. And so if you have no free enterprise free enterprise experience, you're going to get blindsided when you open up that office. Yeah. And I also
How about you?
What's that?
How about you, Howard? What about you? I like the title. It's Howard. It's Uncensored, right?
Yeah.
From a retirement picture, how do you feel about the upcoming years, and when do you feel like you would hang it up? When is it? How do you determine that?
Well, I think that's you got to stay true to yourself. I mean, I couldn't think of anything more miserable than sitting on the couch watching Oprah Winfrey, or all day long, or sitting by the side of a river with a fishing pole. Golfing to me is a blast for about 3 holes, and then I don't get it. I like to tee off, grab a beer from the beer cart lady, eat a hot dog, play with, talk. But I always look at the retirement as the worst case scenario. If something physically ever happened and I lived to be 60, 70, 80, I always looked at it as worst case scenario. When we talked about, one of the most interesting things we did is we talked about that put 4% a year away. So if you needed $2.5 million, or if you wanted amount of money divided by 0.04, I see so many, like my idol mentor dentist, Kenny Anderson, was my next door neighbor. He's in Wichita, Kansas. He's still practicing at age 50. Now, let's just say for hypothetical purposes that this year he only made $100,000. Well, $100,000 divided by, what would you divide that by? 0.04? Or no, what would you divide that by?
80%. Say he needs 80.
No. Well, if he's making a risk-free rate, what would be the average risk-free rate on a government bond? 5%?
Yeah, I mean, typically you can get 4% on a portfolio without taking too much risk, at least in this interest rate environment. So risk-free rate's really low right now.
So if he only made $100,000 this year, and you divide that by 0.04, that's equivalent for Kenny to have another $2.5 million packed away. And I just think I just don't think it's healthy to stop working. And I also, when I look at these dentists who are 40 years old and they say they want to retire at 50, I'm like, dude, you're a fireman. You show up to a house on fire and there's 2 kids and a cat and dog in there, and you don't want to go put it out. What's wrong with what is wrong? Is it you don't like the people you're working with? Is it because you're doing procedures that you could be referring out to any of the 9 specialists? I mean, I've told this story many times. And one of my friends said to me one day, he said, I'd rather be taken out in the backyard and be beaten than do a root canal. And I'm like, dude, you cannot ever do a root canal again, because if it forces you to burn out and quit and depression and what have you, you're going to lose millions. You're not making any money on a root canal. You're never making any money if you hate what you're doing. Because, look at how when I got out of school, all the theories on substance abuse, the country of Portugal has flipped everything down. They're saying people are self-medicating because their environment is horrible. And if you fix their environment, the substance abuse goes away rapidly. And that the last thing a person needs when he's doing substance abuse is be spanked and thrown in a cage. Someone should show up and take the same resources for the money it'd take to put them in prison and say, how can we help you? What do we need to do to help your life? And you help that person's life, and then they no longer need to shoot heroin in their arm every day. And then the other thing I point out is that the most costly thing most dentists do, they always complain about their $250,000 student loans, and I always tell them their first divorce will cost 5 times that much money. And when you look at divorce, a third of it is substance abuse, so something's wrong with their environment. They're self-medicating. A third of it is sex, but another third is money. And so on these financial things, these are things you need to talk about with your spouse. And humans are social animals. They always want to tell you what you want to hear. They never want to talk about the 4,000-pound elephant in the room. And dentists just can't sit down with their spouse and say, look, you spend a lot of money. Quit spending money. Divorce research shows that if you have 2 savers, they're twice as likely to stay married as if you have 2 spenders. It's the same thing with employees. If you got a crazy staff member that just lives way above their means, every 6 months to a year, they're going to be standing in front of you wanting a raise.
Yeah.
And then if you got a saver working in your office, it's like one of the last things on their mind.
Yeah, morals aside, and we joke about it here. It's funny you brought it up, Howard, but we joke about it, but it's kind of tongue in cheek. Like the morals aside, the best financial decision you can make is to not have a relationship with one of your friends or your coworkers or some girl you hired because she was cute. She didn't know how to do the job, but you know what? You liked her, and now all of a sudden she likes you. And the best financial decision you can make is to not go that route, because it's really you're at that point. There's the divorce happens. There's a asset valuation, and they're going to look at your practice and say, well, you have $1 million practice here, and she's going to get half because you guys have been married 30 years. So how are you going to come up with $500,000 to give her? You're not going to sell your practice, because now you have to work twice as hard to make up for the fact that you just gave your ex-wife half of everything you had for her, or your ex-husband if it goes the other route. So yeah, I can make people all the money in the world just by keeping them disciplined and having them invest and all that. But it does get to a bigger situation of you need to communicate with your spouse and keep your marriage healthy, because that's good for you from a moral perspective and a great life perspective. But financially, it's almost even more. But it's better for the both of you. But it really does. It is hard to hit, and I think we're seeing it a little bit less, I'd like to think, and people are, because I think, as you mentioned, there are two incomes now on a lot of the dentists, the younger dentists that we're working with. Their wife works, a lot of their husband-wife dental teams, not in the same office. I think that would be terrible. I know my wife couldn't work with me if I was a dentist, but a lot of them are husband-wife dental teams, and so they come together over that, and they're speaking more, and the communication is open. So, fingers crossed, I think that divorce rate, maybe at least among dentists, goes down.
I just saw a piece of research that said if you were a professional, like a master's degree or higher, and you married someone with that same degree and higher, that you only had a 90% divorce rate. And and part of that is you're both making the same money, you both have a job, you're both educated and can communicate. And I see in my small sampling of opinion, but I've lectured 1,500 times, that women dentists always marry a male dentist about 30% of the time, and the other 70% of them are like you. They got great jobs, accountants, CPAs, bankers, lawyers, physicians, and too many of these male dentists, they marry someone who has no intention of ever working a day in their life, and then on top, which is okay if you're not a spender. But if you're home bored all day because you don't have a job and you're driving around in a Mercedes-Benz getting manis and petties and lunches and flying around and all that stuff, it really causes a lot of problems. Yeah. And
you know what? It's weird, and I don't know if you see it at all, but we're kind of seeing that flip on when there's a female dentist. A lot of times their husbands, if they're not male dentists, they didn't meet at dental school. A lot of times, not a lot. Mike would be a better one to gauge it, but a lot of the husbands aren't working now. They're taking the back seat and they're raising the kid. They're not working outside the home. They're raising kids. They're running around. But it's a weird switch on kind of the industry where now, whereas before it was like, hey, husband, you have to, mind the fact that your wife is at home working hard all day, taking care of these two kids, and you might have had a tough day, but you need to go back and communicate and make her realize that, she's special in your life. Now it's kind of the flip, that the wife is now working and the husband's at home. And, I don't know how, I'm not privy to the conversations with those dentists that we know that the wife works and the husband doesn't, but I think it's a new dynamic in dentistry. I don't know if you see that too or not.
Yeah, one time one of those stay-at-home dads came out to me and said that it kind of hurts his ego to know that he's a stay-at-home dad and his wife makes so much more money. And I said, well, just try not to think about it while you're vacuuming. but no, that was just a joke. But the bottom line with all of this, though, at the end of the story, all of it, back to Warren Buffett, he says that 95% of all CEOs spend 95% of their time trying to raise their overhead. I mean, humans think they're busy when they're spending money because they secrete hormones, they feel better, and they're accomplishing something. And 95% of the time, they're not ever accomplishing anything. And the same thing with spending. I can't believe how these dentists and dental students on student loan monies think they need a $30,000 Honda Acura. It's like, are you kidding me? I didn't have a car in undergrad or the first 3 years of dental school. For 6 years, I didn't have a car, and you need a brand new $30,000 Honda Acura? And then they get out and think, well, I'm a dentist, so I'm going to have to live in Scottsdale, and then I'm going to have to get that big house. And then, I mean, it just, I think that it's just, it's kind of like the difference between exercise and dieting. I mean, you exercise to stay fit, but your abs are made in the kitchen. You can't exercise away a Whopper with cheese. I mean, that'd probably be a 6-mile run just to break even, and you can't work harder than you're spending. And so I want to ask you another benchmark about say okay, you're talking about $12,500 a year in a simple IRA, or $18,000 a year in a 401k, or if you're over 50 like me, it could be $24,000. Is there another benchmark, like a percent of revenue? Like if someone said, forget those numbers, because the incomes vary, what percent should I be saving a month and put away before I see it so I don't spend it?
Yeah, we never really looked at it that way. I mean, when I look at the way I personally try to do it, when we look at our assets at the end of the year, and we obviously have our living expenses, we try to do a third. And this has no financial kind of, this isn't any kind of philosophical, this is how it works for us, but just in our minds with my wife, if we have a net income at the end of the year, excess of what we've used to live on, we try to do a third to paying down her debt, or the debt to buy her practice, a third to savings, and a third for a vacation or fun, or the new couch sofa that hasn't been replaced in a number of years. But I think that's a great way to do it from what keeps you disciplined. So that, at the end of the year, if your practice goes really well and you have $60,000, net income and free of taxes, you can put $20,000 towards paying down the student debt if you still have it, or $20,000 towards paying down the practice if you bought it just a few years ago, $20,000 into an IRA or a taxable account. So there's nothing wrong with taxable accounts. I think that's a big misnomer out there. And $20,000 into going on a vacation and getting a roof that you really want, or doing a landscaping that you really want. And I think it's just a good way to go about it.
So I want you to discuss this. This is an emotional question that shows up on Dental Town a lot. A lot of emotional humans, they don't like that debt, and it weighs down on their psychology, and they have debt, but it's student loan debt, and it might only be 6% interest. And then other people are saying, well, why would you pay down debt on student loans at 6% when you could have it in a fund making 7% or 8 or 9? Yeah. Talk about that. What's the emotional right answer there?
The emotional right answer is that 6.8% debt, after tax is pretty nice, and I would pay down a 6.8% debt, because if you think, okay, if I go 100% into the S&P 500, it averages 9%, 9.6% since 1928 to 2014, right? That's great. You're taking a ton of risk on.
What is that number again? 9 point what?
9.6%.
Since what year?
1928 to 2015.
Wow. Okay, so answer that exactly then. So
So you can get so you can get 9.6, right? You're thinking, well, if I can get 9.6, why would I pay off 6.8? Well, because 9.6 after you're in a tax bracket of 28.28% is going to be 9.8. It's actually a 7% return, 7.05, right? Okay,
and when
so you're like, I'm still ahead of that 6.8. But you're taking on 100% risk of the stock market.
When you say 6.8, you're saying that like an exact number? Is that about the average interest rate you're seeing on dental student loans?
Yeah, after your Stafford if you have 2.1, definitely don't pay those off. Or the federal loans, don't pay the 2 and the 2.5s off. Keep those, and yeah, definitely average it. But on the 6.8, I know what's on my wife's. I know what's on some of our clients. 6.5, 6.8 in there. That's what you have to beat from the market perspective. But you get 9.6, that's 7% after tax. Yeah, you're going to get that average from 1928 to 2015. But what if that year is that you started with 2008 and you're down 36%, and that's fully realized? You don't have a tax benefit from losing that much. Well, now you're automatically just you're just really behind the bus. You're going to get slammed because you just you started in the worst year. So the 9.6 only makes sense if you start thinking about it over a 30-year term. You start talking about it on, okay, I'm going to do it because I think it's going to work this year for my loans, that I can make this spread on this. It's a little, for me, I like paying down the student debt. Well, I would not pay down. I'd pay down the student debt. I wouldn't necessarily pay down the practice debt because you're kind of sitting at the practice income. The revenues should pay that down, and you obviously have a business expense and a tax deduction against your revenues for paying down that interest, or for paying that interest every year. So assuming you have a practice that's doing well, making money, it's going to be hard in the later years, in the 70 years down the road, to find deductions, to find something to pull down your revenues so you're paying less taxes within your business.
I also want you to talk about something else that some dentists have. They went and worked for a dentist like me that had a 401k, or they're working for corporate dentistry or whatever, and now they're no longer going to work there, and you hear television commercials, roll over your IRA or this or that. Will you talk about roll over the IRA? Will you talk about IRA? And what happens if you worked for a big a group practice or corporate dentistry, and you have some 401k, and now you
Sure.
are going to your own practice?
We'll take an example. Say Dr. Smith has a IRA or a 401k at some big corporate dental group he worked at. He socked away $10,000 over the year. He now leaves and he starts his own practice. That money, that $10,000, will sit in that 401k, and it will sit in exactly how he had invested. So if 5 years ago when he started that, he said, I want to invest 100% in China. And every dollar, $10,000 in the Chinese stock market, FXI, it's an ETF. I love it. China's great. It's going to go up forever. That he cannot, once he leaves, that money stays in that 401k account, and he won't be able to act on it or make a change until he rolls it out, what's called a traditional IRA. So he'll roll it out. The plan sponsor will deliver it. He'll start an account, and we can help him set it up. Start an account that basically then accepts the money from the 401k into an IRA. Now he has a traditional IRA with $10,000. He can continue to contribute to that. If he doesn't start a simple, if he does start a simple, he can still contribute. It's just deducted the amount that he can contribute. And we can go through specifics, but those are probably far too boring.
Go through more specifics about. Okay, you said 401k, then you said a simple IRA. What's really the difference in a simple IRA and just your own personal IRA? Is there no difference there?
Yeah, simple is sponsored by an employer, so you can only have a simple if you work for an employer. So my wife's practice is Joyce Family Dentistry. She has a simple plan. Every one of her employers can join that simple plan, and it acts just like an IRA in the fact that the money is contributed pre-tax, and it comes directly out, but it comes directly out of their paycheck. When you look at a traditional IRA, that's started outside of a company. That's just you going to someone, you sitting down and hey, Rob Joyce, I want to start an IRA. I want to start saving for retirement. Okay, how much do you want to put away? Well, I can put up to $5,000 away. Okay, we're going to start you an IRA first because you can put up to $5,500 in an IRA every year. Traditional IRA, that money isn't taxed until it starts coming out, so it grows tax deferred. And on a traditional IRA, you also get a deduction for the amount that you contribute in the year. So, that's kind of the difference. An IRA, a traditional IRA, is you going independent saying, where do I go? I need to start saving. A simple is set up within an employer, but has the same characteristics from a tax situation as an IRA.
And you also said at the beginning of the program that most of these dentists that you see in the last decade are starting to retire about 55 to 58. So if you took a 30-year mortgage on a home off of 58, that means you got into a house at 28, and now at 58, you don't have a house payment. That's not what I see. I keep seeing dentists every 7-8 years trading up to a bigger house, and some of them are just buying Taj Mahals. So when you're talking about retiring at 58, would you like to see the house paid off? Would you like to see the student loans, all the debt paid off?
Yeah, I mean, unless there are some really, really large retirement assets behind it, where the net income from that, a 4% pull, will cover all that debt easily. I want to see debt paid off. Not the worst, but debt payments are no fun when you have a fixed income, because surprises can happen and surprises suck usually when you're retired. And the last thing you want is to get a surprise and then also have a mortgage to pay off. And you're saying, but wait, I only planned this out that I'm going to live on $120,000 a year, right? So you don't want any surprises, and debt compound it.
And there's a lot of psychological issues going on. Like I saw a lot of studies that showed that kids who were coming to age, 16, 17, 18 during the 93 to 2000 bull stock market run where the NASDAQ just kept doubling and doubling and doubling. A monkey could make money in that thing. Had far higher spending lives. I'll never forget my 4 boys' grandpa had more money than any of us, but he grew up in the Depression, and he would never spend any money. I mean, he's still to this day, he won't spend any money. And he's got, he's got more money than me and you combined, and he won't spend it, and that's probably why he has so much. And I also think the greatest thing that ever happened to me is when I walked into college. I walked into college, and it was 1980, and interest rates, 21%, inflation, unemployment went double digits, and those debts skyrocketed. And I'm from Kansas, so a third of my class were farmers, and a couple of those farmers lost the family farm, and Dad went into the barn and shot his head. I mean, he just couldn't believe he was losing a 3, 4, 5 generation farm. And you're right. So when you get a fixed income, and then the economy tanks and interest rates go crazy, it can get ugly, and it's always the best to have one eye on your retirement plan and then your other eye on costs. You just got to beat into dentist heads all the time. Just because you're a doctor, you don't need to eat out 19 out of 30 meals. That's about the average. You don't need this big house, because that's just really some trophy. I mean, the more simple you live, the less money you need. Then you're not going to be stressed. Then you're not going to be coming home from work wanting to drink or stressed or all this stuff. You don't have to do dental. You don't have to learn how to place dental implants and do root canals because you're trying to pay for a trophy house. Just relax. Quit spending money. Get simple.
The one thing I would kind of emphasize or I liked, I was listening to a Dental Town podcast. I can't remember who it was, but they were talking about passive income, and it was on real estate. And I know a lot of dentists like to get into things, and I wouldn't pull them away from doing that. I think it was a great podcast on how to get into getting passive income. I like diversifying your income streams. You're going to be a dentist forever. You're going to have a retirement income, and that's going to provide income. If you have some real estate that you have gotten into or you can get into and use that's going to pay you. You'll have the mortgage paid off in 30 years. That's about the same time you'll be retiring. That income will just help you live. I like that diversification. It was a great podcast on Dental Town. I think they kind of hit it on the head on how to start it. And if someone wanted to get into that, I know some advisors are like, no, don't do any of those things outside of what I handle, because one, they're not getting paid on it, and two, they don't have any control of it. I wouldn't take a dentist away, especially a younger dentist who's like, hey, maybe I want to dip a toe and be prudent about it. It was a good podcast, good thoughts to diversify your income stream in retirement.
And on that last note, I'm going to remind the viewers, why does not a single company own 1% of the cattle industry. You think with McDonald's and all these big corporate beef buyers at Walmart would own, 20% of all the cattle. You know why corporate America, though, there's no publicly traded company holding cattle farms? Because most all cattle farms run at a loss. They're an accountant during the day, and they think they're making money on the side, and they're doing this cattle business, and they don't realize that they're losing 20 cents a pound every time they sell this cow. So, I'm always a stickler. Stick with what you know. And if you decide that you're going to be a condominium developer or real estate developer, just remember there's guys doing it full time, 60, 80 hours a week, and they've been doing it for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And you start competing with those guys and you're a dentist, you can get your ego handed to you in a cup.
And I think the podcast was talking about find the mastermind, right? That you find someone to be, you need to be the passive guy that supplies some capital, gives some, here's what I think, here's where I live, but don't be, find someone to team up with on that kind of stuff. If it's outside of dentistry, find a teammate.
Well, hey, I want to tell you, thank you so much for spending time with me. Tell your lovely wife I said hello, and I hope to see you.
Thank you.
I hope to see you on the Dental Town board. You should go to the finance section and answer more questions. We have 51 sections on Dental Town: root canals, fillings, crowns, whatever. But financial investing is one of the biggest threads we have, and they're debating all day long how to pay off.
You'll be seeing it. You'll be seeing Edge coming up there, and they're definitely welcome to write us too if they have any questions. We're here for them.
Okay, buddy. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.